Salman, you can put on your camera as well. Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, sir.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good, good.
A very warm good evening to all the participants who have come for today's pre-bird festival webinar. Today is the second day of the series of webinars that are being conducted and hosted by the Goa Forest Department as a part of the pre-bird festival activities before the actual bird festival commences early next month. So yesterday we had two very brilliant talks by Dr. Nandini Vaz Fernandez and Parag Ragnekar, who gave us an insight about an introduction to bird watching and about the bird diversity of Goa and its potential as a tourism hotspot. So today we are having two other interesting talks. The first will be on the endemic birds of Western Ghats in Goa, and the second is about birds in reels, deals more about how to successfully photograph and videograph birds. Today we also have our assistant conservator of forest, Sri Paresh Parab, who will be presiding over the webinar and will also be introducing the speakers and starting the proceedings of the day. Paresh sir, if you could take over and begin today's sessions.
Thank you, Pranay. Good evening to all of you. It gives me a lot of pleasure to be here. And yesterday, because of technical hitch, I could not be part of the webinar. But I'm pleased to introduce today's guest speakers, and we have an entire the guests were there in this webinar, and we have worked extensively on forest. So I'm pleased to introduce who is a faculty in Government College of Arts and Science, Sakli. She is a postgraduate in zoology, has avid interest in birds, been doing birding for long, and she'll be talking about birds of Western Ghats. Then we have a person, Amit Raj, who is actually a person behind a camera, right? captures all the events in the forest and has been using a drone technology, and he is being ranked among the best in Bollywood for using drone in filming. And he has done a couple of uh, documentaries or videography for the forest department for several months into different parts of forest of Goa, and they are in a form of documentaries which are on the website about filming, the birds, and about the how do we do it, what are the difficulties. So that will be very interesting because with cameras around, they go out birding, and you can use this technology. Beautiful. This whole webinar actually is a part of pre-festival activities we have, and we have series of guest speakers who will be giving talks on birds, and it's wherein we create a ambience for the bird festival, oncoming bird festival. Forest department has a lot of birding trails in the forest, so we have been promoting that, and almost all the sanctuaries have birding identified birding trail with beautiful signages around, and the trails are properly marked and all the facilities. The best part is on this trail you can go without any fear, because we don't have big mammals like elephants in the, so you can go on a foot, unlike other protected areas in the rest of India. The birding is very beautiful activity. For yesterday, I think Parag spoke on tourism potential in birding, tourism potential in birding, and how we can tap this resource, the alternative livelihood. People who are into bird watching or into tourism activity. Dr. Nandini I just saw her yesterday. Talk, and it was very interesting to listen to her on bird watching, the basic things, and added with some scientific temper to the whole thing. So today's session, I feel, will be very rewarding, and the speakers are learned speakers, will give a lot of insight into a lot of different things about birding, especially endemic birds, which is very few people know about the endemic birds of Goa and Western Ghats, and then of course about the bird photography and bird filming. Yeah. So over to Shalma Mascarenhas. I hope both the, if you have any, can direct questions to the resource persons, today's resource persons. If you need any feedback from the, you have questions for the forest department, you type in we can answer them. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful introduction. Shalma, it is over to you now. And if you could share your screen, then I would also share it on the stream, and then you can begin today's presentation. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful introduction.
Hello.
Yes, Shalma, you are audible and you are good to go.
Okay. Thank you, Paresh sir, for the introduction. And It's my privilege to be here as a part of the webinar series, and I thank the Goa Forest Department for giving me this opportunity. So today we are going to discuss about endemic birds of Western Ghats in Goa. So we know that in Goa we have 477 species of birds, which is a great number if we consider the total area of the state, which is just 3,702 square kilometers. So it is a great number, and we can actually, like for study purpose, we can group these birds of Goa into different types and study them. Like for example, we can study them as forest birds, seashore birds, wetland birds, or resident birds, migratory birds. Also based on the IUCN list, we can classify them as endangered, vulnerable, etc., etc. Also, a group of these we can classify and we can study them as endemic birds. So there are 11 endemic birds of the Western Ghats which are found in Goa. So let's understand what is endemism. Endemism, when we say a particular animal or a plant is endemic to a particular area, it means that that particular plant or animal, and in this case we are talking about birds, so that particular bird is native to the particular region. So in this seminar, we are talking about the endemic birds of Western Ghats. So these birds have gradually evolved and they have remained restricted to the Western Ghats, and they are found nowhere in the world, but they are only found in the Western Ghats. And the reasons that make a species endemic to a particular area would be like climate change or availability of food or unfavorable conditions outside the particular area, which makes them endemic. So this is a map showing the Western Ghats. When we talk about Western Ghats, it is a biodiversity hotspot. Now, what is a biodiversity hotspot? So any area which has rich biodiversity, okay, plants and animals, and also it has lost around 70% or greater than 70% of its diversity because of human interference. That particular area has been declared as a biodiversity hotspot. So Western Ghats is the largest biodiversity hotspot in India, and it ranges from states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, then Kerala and Tamil Nadu. It is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and a total number of like 29 endemic birds are found in the Western Ghats, out of which 11 are reported from Goa, which we'll be discussing about. And to my right is the map of Goa showing the biogeographic zones of Goa. So it is very interesting to note that there are just 3 biogeographic zones that we have in our state, which is the coastal plains, the highlands, and the Western Ghats. So even if we have just 3 of the biogeographic zones, we still have a great number of birds in our state. So Malabar grey hornbill is an endemic bird
I think there is some network interruption at Shalma's end. We'll just wait for a few seconds for her to come back and join. Amadiri internet. Uh, Amit, if you can hear me, there has been a power outage at Shalma's place, so it might take some time for her to join. So maybe you could begin with your presentation so that we don't waste the time of our viewers.
Mm, yes. Yes.
Yes. So
Hello.
if you could share your screen and maybe you could take over and we could wait for her to join and she could continue after you end your presentation so that we don't waste time of our listeners.
Okay. Actually, the small thing is that I have to shift my PPT to my computer. Actually, it will take a few minutes.
Yes, please do that and then we can restart this.
Okay. 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 I'll try
Yeah.
now. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Amit, are we good to go?
Hello.
Amit, are we good to go?
Yes. Just 2 minutes more. I'm just
Yes, yes,
copying
please.
it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Amit, are we good to go now?
Yes, sir. I'm just opening the link from my computer for the PPT.
Yes, please.
I have to put off my speaker.
Yeah, you can put off your speaker and then you can begin. And once Shalma is back, then she can take over from you. So you can begin your talk.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just go to the full screen mode and you can begin. Yes, thank you so much. And just you can hide the small pop up there
Oh, yes.
and then you can begin. Yeah.
Yeah. Are we good to go?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amit Raj. I'm a cinematographer, DOP. So today we are talking about birds in reels. So it's all about video. Yeah. Come on, let's begin here. Okay. So first thing is we talking about understanding the subject. And here our subject is what? Bird. All right. When we're talking about shootings, cameras and all, we always capture a subject, right? So sometimes subject is a human, sometimes subject is some place, landscape, or sometimes it's a bird. So we're talking about bird today. And so basic thing is about the bird is you should know about the bird. Like at least the basics. If you're new in birding, if you're new in filming, shooting for the birds, wildlife, you should know about the bird, very basic things about the bird. But why I'm talking about this, why I'm telling this, because sometimes you want to shoot a bird and you go to the field and you randomly try to shoot something and you have no idea what bird will be doing, what is bird behavior. Like once it happened to me when I went to shoot a bird, particular bird. I was looking at the bird and bird was like not very far from me. And I put my camera, I started shooting. So the bird was very conscious to see me. So maybe I was very near to the bird. Like, so what happened there? Bird was very conscious and not moving from there. And right now I could not show you the video because of some broadcasting issue. So the bird was holding a grasshopper in her mouth. It was a female um, it was female trogon, and she was not moving anywhere. So later I came to know through my friends who is in birding and all. They told me she was waiting for you to move so she can go to her nest to feed her babies. So that was the logic there. And as a new person, I was not understanding that. So that way, basically, I was disturbing that you should not do. And that's for that, at least you need a proper gap of space from the bird. Basically, bird, we call it personal space of everyone's. There's something called personal space of bird also. Even they need some space from humans or anyone else. So that way you need to understand from them that you are giving them a perfect space so they can be there in natural environment. They can behave like naturally, not be conscious, not be disturbed, not be scared. Then only you get a good video, good photos of that, right? Yeah. So later things are like habitat. When we talk about habitat here, why we need to understand habitat? If we are targeting any bird, specific bird, like, okay, I want to shoot some blue-eared kingfisher, like, so where you will find that blue-eared kingfisher? You will not go in wetlands. You will not go in, like beach areas or somewhere. Like you should know about where you will find that bird. At least that basic. So like that you found in forest, like yes. So that is one. And season, definitely season you should know. which season, which bird you'll get it. Behaviors. We spoke on the behavior. So behavior basically, again, that you should understand their behavior. If they are not scared of you, if you're not too close to them, if you want to capture their nice and their real behavior, their original how they are, so you should keep a perfect gap from there. Okay, so this is about the subject, and let's come to the camera. Okay, so understanding the video about the camera, so it's just similar to the photography. Nowadays everyone is a photographer, everyone has phone, everyone has camera in their phone, everyone does photography, correct? So when we talk about photography, what we see in photography, whenever we click a photo, what we see in our frame, we see our subject, right? Yeah, and accordingly subject is looking good. How to make it good, we change the small settings and all and click. Yeah, that is one similar as photography the video is. Now the next thing is know your equipment attachments. Yeah, the basic equipments what we take in a forest, you should always know how to attach it, because we are in the field, we are not in a safe zone, our comfort zone, we are in the field, we don't know how the field is. All forest is always not compatible like how you want to be, like that way. You have to ready for that, for everything. Sometimes there's no proper land to keep your tripod, monopod. Sometimes there's no proper space to stand also. Sometimes there's a water down everywhere. So you should know to attach your equipments properly. Like, I'm talking about camera and tripod. So like, if you're attaching your camera on the tripod, how you attaching it, that also matters. For the video, what we do is we use a special different type of tripods. This is not similar to photography tripod, right? And when we attach the lens or the camera to the tripod, how we attaching it? So we need to know about how, like, can you pass me the camera, please? Yes, sir. When we see our camera, we have a camera here, and the lens here, right? We have something is this. Most of the people think this is a holder to hold in her hand. Practically, this is not. This is for something else. I'll show you. So what we do with this is we should understand the weight of the camera, because we are shooting video here, not a photo. So for photo, we can keep the tripod or monopod here on the camera also, or here also. There's some small screw type. You can put your base plate here, tripod base plate, and put it here. Yes, for the video, you always should understand weight of the camera. If you're putting the tripod here for the video, weight will be too much this side, right? So there are chances to fall, or when you're moving with the camera, it's not safe, basically. So you should understand your weight of the camera. Always put here to balance the weight of the camera, both sides. And while moving on from the tripod, when you're tracking any subject, any bird, it's easier for you to balance it. You don't have to carry the weight of the camera. Weight is carried by tripod, not you. So you'll get a smooth transition, smooth movement for the camera. Yeah. Okay. So next is detach the camera from tripod while moving. Yeah, this is a very healthy practice. So what happens? We tend to move or run around when we see a subject or bird moving from one branch to other branch. We try to run, which is not safe. Few days back, one of my friend was moving the same way. We were shooting together, and he saw a bird, which was some rare bird. He told me the name, and then he started running behind the bird. And what he did, he just picked his tripod and a camera and started running. And somewhere there was some stone, and he just hit that stone and then fell down. So we got to see then camera was and then broken, and the lens was damaged, everything. So which is not good. Yes, that is definitely, you have to be quick in the forest to get that bird because bird will not wait for you, definitely. But in that case, you should not lose your camera equipments also, because those are very costly. So just be careful for that. And always while moving from one place to another place, don't do rush, and detach the camera from tripod and move softly if possible. Yes. There's some weatherproofing cameras. Most of the camera what we use in field right now, any DSLR, any cameras which has no zooming out, like I'm talking about lenses also, which like when we turn and it doesn't zoom out and comes out from the body, those are like weatherproof lenses and cameras. So what happens when we go to the field, sometimes it's like normal drizzle or something is happening, we are very careful about the cameras. Yes, you should be, because it's equipment. If something happens, yeah, it's a lack of loss. So you just be careful for that. And there are few things, few cameras and few lenses also, which is weatherproofing, they claim, the company claims. So know about that, Google it, and make sure your camera is weatherproof, and then you can freely use it in any condition, any weather. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so what we have for filming equipments. When we talk about filming equipments, this is similar as photography. Yes, kind of, yes. Only few things is different. Only few things. We talk about a camera. We have a camera. Okay, there is no promotion here. So just for talking about the cameras and lenses. So we have a camera here, a camera body. We take in a field. We take our lenses, tele lenses, which we call in normal zoom lenses, and a tripod, a good tripod for the video. So we have, you can see the tripod here, a bigger tripod, which is the same size actually, but it's different. Why it is different? Because it has a head, a big head. If you can see here, it's a fluid head. So when you turn your camera, when you hold this handle grip, you have a head here. It has a hydraulic mechanism. So it gives you a very smooth motion. So if you're tracking any bird or anything, it gives you a very smooth transition and move. So you can easily track it, and without any camera shakes and all, you can just keep that bird in the frame nicely, maintaining it, and you can just pan and tilt whatever you want. Talking about the sliders, sorry. Talking about the sliders. So this is slider here. The camera we put the camera here. Mostly we use for the wide angle lenses in this. And when we are filming any habitat, any forest area like that way, so we put on the sliders and give a nice smooth motion. So the slider moves from left to right this way. Gives a good transition basically. Yeah, this is one. And a field monitor. Why the field monitor is important? Field monitor is this bigger monitor you have to see the video on that. So we put it above the, I could not get the photo for the short period of time. Yes, so basically we have a field monitor to see the video on your monitor, to clarify the basically what you are shooting in this the camera, because most of the camera has a very small tiny screen. And for the tiny screen, sometimes you miss the focus. And when we talk about the video, we are always little moving. It's not still, right? And sometimes in a video you get a glitch of focus shifting from foreground to background. It always happens. Everyone has noticed it, right? So this is the problem. That is why we use field monitor for the bigger view, to understand the proper focus. And one more thing I can tell you about what happens sometimes when we shoot from our camera. Sometimes it's just we are shooting some video, we're tracking some bird, and we shot and we came back home and we are opening in our big screen computer laptop. We find what, oh, this was not in focus. Focus was back in background. Something happened. So to avoid that, I will recommend everyone who is shooting video to be on the manual focus. It's, yeah, it is little different, difficult, but it is more easier for you to work in the post later when you want to edit it and want to use it as a proper film, or you want to you keep it somewhere, like, you're very sure about that you're getting proper focus video. Otherwise you should not later regret, oh, I got a bird nicely but the focus was behind. You should make sure that focus is in your hand, you are making it. And yes, the field monitor and the memory cards. Yeah, memory card and the batteries. Why we call it this way? Because what happens sometimes, we take our equipments, everything we have, cameras with big lenses, tripod, everything we have, but we sometimes forget to carry the memory cards. It's a very small tiny thing, we don't care also. It's like same thing how the army goes to the war zone and they have all the guns and all, but nobody has carried the bullets. It's the same thing. So you have birds in front of you, but you can't shoot. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. Okay, here. Why do you need a good tripod or a good tripod? Yes, you can see the example here. Why you need a good tripod? So here one of my friend tried shooting with handheld. It's a GIF coming at a slow motion, but yeah, this is the glitch. If you can see, this is the shake of the camera. You can see the subject is not in one area, one frame, right? Just keep moving, keeps moving, keeps moving. This is why you need a good tripod. All right, cool. So here we talk about lights. So when we talk about lights, we understand this sun, which gives us a light on exterior, outdoors, and all. Because interior, when we shoot, we have a controlled environment. We can put on the lights of whatever we want. But what happens in the field? When we go outside, we have a source of light, which is sun. All right. So we have to think about that also. Before shooting, you have to properly plan what time you want to go and what is the best timing to shoot birds. Um, Pranasa will tell later that definitely morning and evening time is a good time to shoot birds, good time of birding basically, and that is also the good time for shooting also. Why it is so? Because you can see the difference here without the sun what we got and with the sun what we got. This is the without the sun. So the same place, same area, same birds, same nest. You can see that without the sun. This is just after 6:30 I shot. There was a little daylight there, but there's no sun. You can see little noise on the body of the bird, noise behind also. I can't show the video here again because of the broadcasting issue. I have just screenshot the video and showing you. So we can see the noise. I hope everyone understand about the noise. Noise is which is noise comes when we have very less amount of light exterior, and when we try to expose the photo or the video in a normal neutral lighting way, so we have to increase the ISO. More the ISO we increase, more the noise we get. That is the noise. Here you can see the little pixelation behind it, the dark area everywhere. Yes, so this is what happened when you have a less light, and you can see this full photo is very flattish, like it's not giving you a life, not giving you like something which is wow. And the other side with sun, what we got, you can see the backlight falling on nice, like can't see the backlight, it's a crown light, you can say it's a crown light falling on the bird, same bird drongo, and giving a nice look. So see the golden effect of that, you're getting a highlight in the body here, the nice highlight here, a mid light here, and in the darkness. So we have all three things. This is what makes a photo different because of light. You should always choose wisely what time you want to go out for the shooting. What time is a good time for the shooting of bird? Birds will be there, I feel, every time. But what time you go for shooting is depends on you. So properly plan for that and then go ahead. Okay, I have given some details of the photo, the video basically, what resolution, what ISO I shot it. Yes. So for other things, we'll talk next. Yeah, the triangle rules, or the exposure triangle we call it. I hope everyone knows who does photography, who does bird photographies and all also. The people who does manual photography, they know about this. So the ISO shutter speed aperture. It's the same thing what we do in the photography also, same thing in video also. There's not much of difference here. The only thing, what difference here, what one thing differs for the video, it's not a difference, but it gives the extra work for you here, which is shutter speed. Shutter speed helps you in one more thing here, to make your video. So when you're shooting some video in particular resolution, particular settings, particular shutter speed and all, we'll talk about shutter speed later for this. So we can talk now actually. Once again. Oh, so this is resolution. I hope everyone understand about resolution. Everyone has TV, so now people think about they have 4K TV and all. So 4K phones they shoot sometimes videos. So when you are shooting 4K video, what does it mean? What are you shooting in 4K? It was not 4K earlier. It was like something HD, full HD, something we should call it. So these are the resolution. So how you understand about the resolution? What it matters? Yeah. So let's understand this. So I think if you see any YouTube videos or something, you get to choose some qualities there. If depends on your internet speed, we try to choose it, like how it is 720p. So 720 means the 720 resolution is here, 1280 to 720. That is the resolution we are playing on. Excuse me. And this is the, okay, this is again, it's called a half HD also. 720 is called half HD. Yes. And the 1920 1080 is called a full HD that we had earlier in our TVs. Now the thing is changed. Now we have 4K TVs. So this is something called 2K and 4K. So what is these numbers? What these things makes difference here? So let's try to understand this. So what happens when we talk about something, we are shooting some, like nowadays you see people having a good phone, they have a high megapixel cameras and they try to shoot something very very clean picture, very detailed picture. So how it is, what it is exactly. The 4K means is 4 million pixels basically, and it goes like, okay, I think everyone has, not everyone, but somebody at least has seen film shootings or with the bigger cameras, any film, any TV serials, any TV serial, something they have seen. So you'll have seen some bigger camera they use normally. So what do you expect? What is the resolution of those bigger cameras or the pixels? Like we call about, okay, my phone has a 48 megapixels, my things has different megapixels. Everyone talk about that, right? But what is that and how it makes difference? So the bigger camera, what we see for the film shootings and all, that is just a 12 megapixel camera, just 12 megapixel. Okay, so how it does matter? Because 12 megapixel, that is enough to shoot 4K. So what is 12 now? Again, we talk about the 12, 4K. For 4K, how many pixels we need is just the basic thing. I'll tell you in a very simple way. See, when we talk about 4K, you can see the TV here. It's a 4K TV. How it is 4K? So you just need a 12 pixel to shoot. Hello?
Yes, Amit,
Sorry.
you are audible. You can continue.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So when we talk about the resolution, so we go through like, okay, just I think I'm going too much ahead for the resolution. I'll show you again from the second line. So which platforms, when we're shooting video, we go through the camera settings and we see like for what resolution we're shooting, HD, 2K or 4K. Let's understand this first. So we have to decide that first, what purpose we are shooting, for whom we are shooting, what platform we are shooting. Basically, when we talk about YouTube, when we talk about Instagram, TV, cinema, theaters, so that is the different thing. On that basis, we need to decide what resolution we want to shoot. Every video camera has a resolution. Okay, the same way you can see 720p, 1080p, 2K and 4K. That way we have to decide on that basis. So if we are shooting only for the Instagram screen, you have seen it's a very small screen. So you don't need to shoot 4K video for that. You'll be simply filling your memory card and then copying in the computer and keeping it for a long time. Just simply no use if you are making only for the Instagram. So better you should shoot in 720p. That is more than enough for Instagram because that is a very small screen. Yes, if you're shooting for TVs, mostly HD is recommended because not everyone has a 4K TV and that will not give a proper resolution and the normal TVs also. So for that, you are just recommended to shoot HD for the TVs. Definitely for the cinema and films, they need 4K because sometimes they show in a bigger theaters for that purpose. Yeah. So choose the resolution depends on the platform where you want to put it. Okay. So some camera has a limitations regarding the resolution. So sometimes you get only 720p, sometimes only 1080p, and sometimes 4K is there, but for one condition. That condition we'll talk next. Okay. Now there's something called frame rates. So frame rates, what is the frame rates we understand about? I think it's, if you talk about the photography, what is photography? Photography is about clicking a frame, right? freezing a frame we talk about, right? One frame. So that is photography, we call it. So what happens with the video? When we captures multiple frames in a certain period of time and we combines it, that becomes a video, right? Like how if you can see here, there are 60 frames here, like on top, 60 pages, 60 photos of some particular thing. So sometimes we try to click a bird in a very continuous manner, like very high speed. We click multiple photos, tuck, 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 it goes like, and then when we try to see it, it just gives a motion, right? Sometimes it gives a motion. It's like bird is moving, bird is trying to fly or do something. We captures it. So that way, that is called the frames, how the video becomes later. Okay. So you understand about the frame, what is the frame? And why we choose the frame rates different when we choose it. So sometimes I think everyone has seen the videos of hummingbird or any fast moving bird, which is showing it's like a slow motion and discovery on other channels if you have seen. So slow motion, yeah, the slow motion word is there. So very normally we use it slow motion. Slow motion is what people are moving in a very unrealistic way. We try to show in a very nice way with a detailed way. Okay, so when you try to capture some bird in a very slow motion, so that time your frame rates helps you. So you should keep always a higher frame to capture the bird in slow motion and in the proper detail. That is when you want to decide what frame rates you want to keep it. Normally what we keep a frame rate, normal any camera, it keeps like a 24 to 25 frame rates. It's just normal frame rates. I think I hope everyone has seen the Charlie Chaplin movies earlier, the old ones, black and white. Yeah. So let's do something for that, just to understand the Charlie Chaplin thing. Okay. So what used to happen in Charlie Chaplin? Charlie Chaplin was a very old movie, and that time the camera was like for the roll ones. So they used to manually roll the photos every time with their hand to capture that image from frame by frame. The Charlie Chaplin was moving like a normal human, right? But when we see on the TV, on the screen, we see him like as a doing something fast motion, something he's moving fast forward type, like something. So how it happens? Because we are skipping frames in between. Can we do a practice just quickly if everyone is interested? So what we can do, try to look around you while just blinking your eyes. Try to look around like this way, blinking your eyes, and try to look other things. How it is? You're trying to skip the frames in between, right? When you move like normal, when you move your head, you're getting a smooth video, right? Just imagine your eyes are like video camera, and try to just turn your head. It's nice and smooth things you're getting, right? Just like a normal camera. Once you try to skip the frames in between, just blink your eyes and then again turn. You're getting an effect of Charlie Chaplin something, or just make them walk sometimes, and then try to do this. So you feel like you're skipping the frames in between. You're missing the frames in between. And that's how gives you a not smooth video, basically, like how Charlie Chaplin was. So now we have a very good camera and we can capture at least the 24 frames. So we get a smooth video. But again, it's a combination of photos only. 24 photos in 1 second. What is 24 FPS? 24 frames per second it is. When we talk about. So FPS is a very common word in the camera, we say. So here one. And high frame rates, we call it for the slow motion things. So high frame rate goes to multiple frame rates. It goes like normal other cameras has 50 frames or maximum 100 frames we have. And the bigger cameras we cross to 100, 200, but till goes to 1000 also. That way we have many cameras. But that's how. You should know your camera limits also there. The limitation we were talking about earlier was here. So sometimes the camera has a 4K, but what happens? We can't shoot 4K in high frame rates. We can't shoot 4K in 50 frame rates. We can't shoot 4K in slow motion basically. So we have a limited this. Only 24 frames we can shoot in 4K. So that time what we do, we decrease our resolution. We come to 1080p, lesser resolution, and then we get 100 frames sometimes, 50 frames sometimes. That depends on the camera again. So that you should know, and you should decide if you are shooting particular bird is very fast, you get a particular detail about the bird, you need a particular detail about the bird, then you should always go for the higher frame rates. So that is 50, 100 and more than more, whatever you get in the camera. and for that you need to decrease the resolution, but the quality will be little less. Is this less than a half actually? Yeah, so that depends on your frame rate and the resolution. Yes, that was it. Like, thank you for this. Yeah, friends. Mhm. Okay, any questions for anyone? You can type it down.
Yeah, Amit, thanks a lot. So you have some question, one question that has come now, and I will
Yeah.
flash it on your screen. So, what photo editing app would you recommend for post processing?
Okay, there's an app which is Lightroom. You get it of Adobe Lightroom. Basically, normally I use it for that. It's a good one. One is this. Yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do is, while other questions come, and since we lost a lot of time while shuffling between you and Shalma, I'll
Okay.
kind of pass it on to Shalma so that she can continue with the presentation. And any questions that are there on whatever you spoke, we can take it up at the end of the session, right? So thanks a lot, Amit, and please be on the stream in case there are questions for you. I'll pass it on to you at the
Sure,
end.
sure.
Yeah,
All
thank you
right.
so much. Yes, yes. Shalma, hi. If you could, start maybe from the start, because people have been listening to a different talk. So you can start from the beginning and then go ahead and put your presentation on the full screen mode.
Can I start, sir?
Your presentation is not on full screen mode. If you could go and check that.
Is it on
Have
full?
you? It's not yet on full screen. So on the StreamYard, you will have to select the presentation and not the background of the PowerPoint. That's how it shows on full screen.
Yeah, it's showing on full screen. So.
Yeah, you can just go ahead then. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. We are going to discuss about endemic birds of Western Ghats in Goa. So, there are 477 species of birds in Goa, which we can group into forest birds, coastal birds, wetland birds, or we can also group them into migratory birds, resident birds. And so one such group of birds is the endemic birds, and there are 11 endemic birds of the Western Ghats that are found in Goa. So let's understand what is endemism. Endemism is the state of a species being native to a defined geographic location. So here we are talking about endemic species of the Western Ghats. So this species or these birds, they have evolved in the Western Ghats and they have restricted themselves to the Western Ghats. So they are not found anywhere else in the world. They are only found in the Western Ghats. So this first map shows the Western Ghats, which ranges from the states of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. Here, when we're talking about Western Ghats, we need to know that the Western Ghat is also a
Sharma, can I
biodiversity
interrupt you,
hotspot.
please?
Yes, sir.
Your presentation is not moving, so you have not selected the screen to share properly. So if you could just go to StreamYard, the platform that we use, and select share screen, and then when you select the share screen on application window, you will have to choose the presentation and not the full screen presentation and not the presentation at the background.
So is it okay now?
It still shows your presentation and not the full screen. You'll just have to go to present mode.
Yeah, I've done that already.
So once you do that, you come back to Chrome, do the share screen again.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, it is perfectly fine now. You can proceed now.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for it got disconnected and then this problem. Sorry for that. So we are discussing about endemic birds of Western Ghats in Goa. And as discussed earlier, Goa has 477 species of birds, which can be grouped into different types depending on how we want to study them. Like we can group them into forest birds, coastland birds, or wetland birds, then migratory resident birds. Then based on the IUCN list also, we can classify or we can group them into endangered, vulnerable, and study them like that. So out of these 477, there are 11 endemic birds. They are endemic to the Western Ghats and they are found in Goa. So we are going to discuss about these 11 endemic birds. So let's understand what is endemism. Endemism is a state of species being native to a particular geographic area. In this case, like we are talking about the endemic birds of Western Ghats. So these birds have evolved in the Western Ghats and they have remained restricted to the Western Ghats. They have not moved outside, and so they are not found anywhere else in the world. They are only found in the Western Ghats. So this is the map of the Western Ghats showing from where it ranges from. So these mountainous ranges of the Western Ghats, they range from Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, and on my right there's a map showing biogeographic zones of Goa, and it is very interesting to know that we have just 3 biogeographic zones in Goa: the coastal plains, the mid highlands, and the Western Ghats. Apart from, like, even if there are 3, then still we have great number of birds in the state. If we look at the biogeographic zones, and also if we compare the total area of the state, we can say that we have good number of bird diversity in Goa. And we're talking about Western Ghats here because Western Ghats is a biodiversity hotspot. Now, areas which show great plant and animal diversity, and also if they have lost 70% of its diversity because of human interference, those areas are termed as biodiversity hotspots. So Western Ghats is a biodiversity hotspot having rich diversity, and it is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So talking about the endemic birds that are found in Goa, we have Malabar grey hornbill, which is endemic, and it is the smallest Asian hornbill. As compared to the other hornbills that we see around, it is smaller in size, and also at the beak, if you see, and if you compare it to the pied hornbill has a structure called as casque, or we call it as a horn. We call it as a horn or a casque. So this structure is absent in the Malabar grey hornbill. The casque, which I'm talking about, it is an indicator of sexual maturity in the birds, and also it is a resonating chamber to amplify the sound of the bird. We are going to hear the call of the bird. It is a cackling, laughing sound. Okay, so you have heard the sound, the call of the bird. If this Malabar grey hornbill is around, it can't go unnoticeable. Also because of the flap of their wings. So when they fly, the flap of their wings makes a particular sound. Okay, so both the call and the flap of the wing are both signs, or you can easily make out that there is a Malabar grey hornbill or there is a hornbill around you. Also, there is a difference between the male and the female. The male has a reddish base to the beak with ending into a yellow tip, whereas the beak of the female has a black base and pale yellow at the tip. It also has a black stripe on the upper mandible. So that is the difference. And these are forest birds. You usually will find them in the forest. But if you have rubber plantation or arecanut plantation around your house, you are likely to see these birds around. And when they move, they are usually in a pair or are usually seen in small groups. They also show a very different type of nesting behavior where they are called as secondary cavity nesters. So in the forest, they go in search of trees that have cavities. Now the tree will have cavity maybe because of a broken branch or some disease to the tree. This hornbills will go in search of such a cavity in the tree, and the female will go inside the cavity, and with its droppings the female will block the entrance and leave a small aperture for the male to get food into it. So the job of the male is to search for food and get the food near the entrance of this nest, and this narrow small aperture that is left, the female will come near the opening and it will collect the food. So the entire time when the female is laying the eggs and taking care of the young one, it will stay inside the cavity, which is covered, the opening is covered with the droppings of the female, which will this will protect the eggs and the young ones from the predators. And the job of the male is only to get the food during this period. In the last picture, you can see a juvenile, a young one, coming out of the nest. You can see the difference as the beak is not well developed or in the young one, and also the color is pale. It's not dark green. This is a map showing a range map showing the showing distribution of Malabar grey hornbill in the Western Ghats. Next, we have Rufous babbler. This bird gets the name Rufous because of its color. Its wings are rufous tinge colored, and it is also a forest bird, just like Malabar grey hornbill. But you will see this bird feeding close to the ground as it feeds on insects. So in search of insects, it will fly very close to the ground and you will be able to see it there. It also feeds on berries and nesting. It makes its own nest. It will be a small cup-like nest, very small nest in the trees. This is the range map showing the distribution of Rufous babbler in the Western Ghats. Nilgiri wood pigeon, it's an uncommon bird. It prefers to stay in the dense forest where there is a dense canopy, and which makes us difficult to have look at the Nilgiri wood pigeon because it is always found in the dense forest. It is a frugivorous bird. It only feeds on fruits, and because of it, it plays an important role in seed dispersal. So its movement into the forest will also depend on the fruiting season of the trees. Okay, so it will move in the dense canopies in the forest. It will move from one area to another in the forest itself, depending on the fruiting season of the different forest trees. And since it feeds on the fruits, it is playing an important role in seed dispersal of the forest trees. This is the range map showing the distribution of Nilgiri wood pigeon. Next endemic bird, we have Malabar parakeet, which is also called as blue-winged parakeet. To the left is a male, and the difference between the male and the female is that the beak of the of the male or the upper mandible is red in color, whereas in the female, the both upper and lower mandibles are black in color. Both of them have a black collar around the neck, but in the male, the black collar is has a bluish tinge to it. Just you can see it in the picture. That is the difference. Also, this female Malabar parakeet is usually mistaken to be the plum-headed parakeet. Now, plum-headed parakeet has yellow collar, so that's the difference between them. You find this Malabar parakeets, usually they are in flocks, so they will forage on the fruiting trees, and they are usually found in flocks, and they are very noisy. And this is the distribution of the Malabar parakeets in the Western Ghats. Okay, next we have grey-headed bulbul. The head of the bird is grey in color, and this particular bird shows a very interesting behavior, that in its non-breeding season, when it is breeding, it stays in pairs. In the non-breeding season, it will join other birds, okay, for foraging. It's a foraging pattern that we see, and it will join other birds. So it is called as mixed species foraging flock. Okay, so it is mixed species foraging flock, where this grey-headed bulbuls, they will join other birds of other species, and they will go in search of food. Now, the advantage of staying in such a flock and gathering food is it helps them to keep an eye on the predators. Okay, when they are feeding and there are more number of birds in the flock, it helps them to stay protected and keep an eye on the predator. And the disadvantage of staying in such a flock and foraging is that the weaker ones, the young ones or weaker ones, may be neglected and may not get enough food. Okay, that's the disadvantage. Again, the map showing distribution of grey-headed bulbul in the Western Ghats. Next bird that we have is the Vineyard laughing thrush. It gets its name because of the call, of the bird. Okay, it has a laughing sound, and then with a pause, it is again shows the call. It's lower in pitch. So there are two different variations in the sound, in the pitch of this bird, and it looks like a laugh when you hear it. So it is called as laughing thrush. This is distribution pattern of the Vineyard laughing thrush. Now, if you observe, you can see that it is not equally distributed. Okay, in the northern part of the Western Ghats, it is not found. This Vineyard laughing thrush is not found. It is only from like Goa, and then in the southern part of the Western Ghats, it is been reported from there. Next, we have white-bellied blue flycatcher. This is the picture of the male, which is indigo blue in color, with belly part showing white color, which is bordered by grayish color. And this is again a forest bird. It is very quiet and inactive. Okay, it is very quiet and inactive. Usually, it will not be seen because it does not it is not very active in the forest. So even if when it is foraging, it will be very quiet. The female of white-bellied blue flycatcher is dark olive brown in color with ruffles tinge at the throat and the tail feathers. This is the distribution pattern of the white-bellied blue flycatcher. They feed on insects and sometimes on berries, fruits that they get. Next, we have crimson-backed sunbird, or it is also called a small sunbird. The picture to the left shows the male, and to the right is the female. You can see the color differences. The male has very shiny greenish bluish forehead and crimson red color, whereas in the female it is not brightly colored as the male, and the rump is red in color, crimson red in color only at the rump part of the bird. They are nectar feeders. Okay, the small it is also smaller in size. Both the male and the female, they are small in size, and they are nectar feeders. They will feed on the nectar. So it makes the small size is an adaptation. It helps them to even go inside the bigger flowers and collect the nectar from there. And another adaptation to nectar feeding is the beak. Okay, it is pointed downwards, which helps them to collect nectar from the flowers. And also, its tongue is brush-like. It's the tip of the tongue is brush-like, which helps them to sip the nectar. So they are nectar feeders. So apart from being in the forest, if you have a good garden around your house, they are garden visitors. Actually, they are garden visitors, and you will see them around your house if you have a good garden where you have good flowering plants. So these birds will be common visitors in your garden. Also, because since they are nectar feeders, they come in close contact with the flowers, and thus they become agents of pollination. Okay. This is the distribution of the crimson-backed sunbird in the Western Ghats. This is the nest. So they make their nest, which is a suspended type of a nest, and the nest will be in the bushes, not on the high trees. It will be like more close to the ground. It will be in the bushes, and it will be suspended. Next endemic bird, we have Vigus sunbird, which is again there is the sexual dimorphism seen in the male and the female. The male is brightly colored, and the female is brownish in color and does not have the bright red color that the male has. Also, these are also nectar feeders, and so the beak of the bird is bent downwards, which helps them to feed on the nectar. And they are also small, just as the small sunbird. This is the distribution. Now you can take a note that this Vigus sunbird, it is found, or it's been reported in the northern part of the Western Ghats, and then it is reported in Goa and Karnataka, and not in the southern, like in Kerala. It's not been reported. Next endemic bird is the white-bellied trippi. It is very rare, and if you get to see this trippi, white-bellied trippi, you are actually very lucky, because even photographers who go to the forest, they just wait to get a picture of it. So it's very rare, and it's usually mistaken for Ruffus tripi, which is common. The picture is to your right. That is the Ruffus tripi, which is more common than the white-bellied tripi. But the difference is in white-bellied tripi, the belly region, head region is white and not of Ruffus tinge as seen in the Ruffus tripi. So this map explains it all. It is very less, um, very less reportings from Goa, and it is not found or it's not been reported from the northern part of the Western Ghats. It's not present or not reported from Gujarat, Maharashtra regions, and from Goa it starts. And then we have Malabar barbet, which is also endemic, which is a forest bird. You can see that for the head region there are colors like it's a very bright colored barbet. There is red, blue, black, and then the body which is olive, which is green, brightly colored, and it is usually been mistaken to be the coppersmith barbet, which is dark in color and has yellow for its throat region, and also the belly part shows different colors and striations there, which is not present in the Malabar barbet. So that's about the barbet and the distribution of the Malabar barbet. This is the map showing, it's the range map showing the distribution. Again, if you notice, it is not been reported from the northern part of the Western Ghats. Okay, so when we talk about endemic birds, we need to be aware of them because it makes them like kind of special or groups them into being endemic. Okay, that's the, you can say, good side of it, that you get to see these birds only in a particular region. But at the same time, this speciality of theirs is a threat to them, because if the habitat is lost, the species are lost. This species being present or being there only in the Western Ghats, if the habitat has been destroyed, if the Western Ghats are, if there is destruction because of human interference, if the habitat is lost, then all these species, all these endemic birds, or for that matter endemic plants and animals of the Western Ghats will be lost, because they are not found anywhere else in the world. And so protecting the habitat is very much important, especially when we speak about endemic birds whose distribution is very much limited to a particular area, and they are not cosmopolitan. So it's not like if at a particular, in the particular area, if there is some threat to them, it's not that they can go outside of it and survive over there. It becomes really difficult for them to do that. And there is a portal, you can say, it's Bird Count India, has been doing awareness in this field. So in the month of May, like this has started right from like 2015. So in the month of May, a day has been selected as the Endemic Bird Day. So people, like anybody, like on that day, which is declared as the Endemic Bird Day, for those 24 hours, you can go out. You need not go to the Western Ghats or other biodiversity hotspots to have a look or get a picture of the endemic birds. You can do it in your backyard also. Like this endemic birds, if you're staying very close to the forest or even otherwise, they may be a regular visitors like in your backyard or in your garden or locally, like they may be found. So what people do, people on this day, like for those 24 hours, pictures are taken or checklist is prepared and then it is uploaded on their portal. So it keeps a check on uh, the endemic birds. They get to know or have an idea of the location and distribution of these birds. And also it's a awareness kind of, people are more aware about the endemic birds in their area, in their localities. So in the eBird also, the data has been fed from time to time and it keeps a check on the endemic birds. So that's all that I had to speak about endemic birds. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Shalma, for that lovely presentation. And we have already requested if there are some questions from the audience, they can ask. Meanwhile, there is a specific question for Amit that has been asked based on the previous presentation. So, Amit, I'll just flash the question and also read it for you. So, Suhail asks that there are three questions in particular. Two questions in particular. The first one is there any good video editing app for a phone? And the second is, what resolution do I use to click pictures so I can print? So, if you could elaborate on these two questions, a little more elaborate about what app and what resolution, that would be more helpful.
I missed the name, sorry.
Suhail.
Hi, Sohail. Okay, the app what I use for video editing is Adobe Premiere Pro. One is that, and the second one Sony Vegas. Now it's not of Sony. So the Vegas Pro is there, which is very light for any computer, any laptop that you can use it. Vegas Pro, and yeah, Premiere Pro. So these are the video editing softwares. And you spoke about the photos resolution. So it depends on for what purpose you need. If you want to print it for a small size, for small photo frames and all, any resolution will work for that. And like for the photography, we have a pixels, we call it, say there. So in all the cameras you see the maximum pixel and the minimum, the mid one. Okay, there is something called fine term is there in the photo. When you select the photo resolution, there's something called fine, raw. If you shoot raw, you have a better image quality there in that, in the sense of color correction. If you want to do it post processing, it helps you there. So if you go to maximum resolution, you can print as big as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. I think you missed on one point where the question was about video editing app for a phone. On a phone.
Oh, sorry. Okay, it was a phone.
Yeah.
For the phone, I use a GoPro Quick. There's a app called GoPro Quick. Quick app is there for the GoPro actually. On that you can edit any videos, if you copy any video from other phone also, you can just import it and edit it. That is the one good editing software I feel like I personally do.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Amit. Okay, there is one question for Shalma now. Actually there are two questions, Shalma. So I'll just share it on the screen. There's one question which goes, is spot-breasted fantail also an endemic species? Is it seen in Goa?
I don't think it is seen in Goa. I think it's endemic to the Eastern Ghats, or it's found in the Eastern Ghats.
Yeah, so if I may add to that, the spot-breasted fantail was for a long time synonymous with the white-throated with the white-browed fantail, and now there has been a split, and the spot-breasted fantail or the white-spotted fantail is a separate species, and the white-spotted fantail is actually a resident of the entire Indian subcontinent. The distribution starts from the south of Rajasthan all the way till Chennai city. So, and it's very wide, east, west, north, south. So it's not an endemic species of the Western Ghats per se, but definitely from India, and it's definitely seen in Goa as well, Deepak. So the next question, Salma, is Which endemic bird species can we expect to see in the upcoming Goa Bird Festival? Maybe I will answer that. Deepak, you can probably see at least 8 of the endemic species that Chalma has mentioned, and she had mentioned that there are 11 endemic species. There have been recent changes in the taxonomy, and the total number of endemics has gone up to 16 Western Ghat endemics that are found in Goa. This is the current, as of today, number, and out of that, anywhere between 8 to 10 species can be very easily spotted at the venue of the bird festival, that is at Bhagwan Mahavir Wildlife Sanctuary National Park itself. So you can look forward to that. Amit, then there is one more question for you. It's probably more about binoculars. Maybe it's optics, so someone thought it's good to ask. So Ashish Kumar asks you, which binoculars would be good for a bird watcher?
Sorry, I'm not good with the binoculars and all. I can tell you about the camera lenses. Pranasa, if you can, sorry.
Yeah. So, Ashish, the question for the answer to the question is that binoculars depends on what is the purpose of it for bird watchers, especially. Binoculars, the range goes from 8 into 40, 10 into 50. So 50 is the size. So the larger number is actually the size of the objective. Through which light enters the binoculars, and 8 or 10, the smaller values, are basically the zoom values. So an 8 into 40 binoculars would mean the zoom of the binoculars is 8x, and the 40 means the front or the objective of the binoculars is 40 mm. The size is 40. So that much light. So the bigger the objective size, the more the light that can come in. So more the performance in low light conditions. But the problem is that the larger the objective, the heavier the binoculars, the difficult to use it on field. And then there are also something called roof binoculars and prism binoculars. So roof binoculars are the ones which are like nitrogen sealed, and it is just two tubes with no prism, whereas the prism binocular actually has a prism. It refracts light and then it gets it to you, which are the big ones which you usually see on movies, where people who go on wars use that kind of binoculars. For bird watching, the ideal one is 8 into 40 for beginners. There is an Olympus 8 into 40 binoculars that can be used, which is about 5,000 rupees, Indian rupees. That is very good for beginning for bird watching. But then there are some really good mid-range binoculars. For example, you have the Nikon Pro Staff version, which is also very good, and it's a roof binoculars. And so there is a lot of option in the market. So depending on what you want and what is the purpose and what level of birding you want to do, you can go for binoculars. Amit, there are more questions for you. Maybe you could answer in a little more detail on that. Which camera would you recommend for bird photography? I think that's an age-old question that everyone asks. So if you could go around about that.
Okay, so if you talk about photography again, so photography doesn't matter with resolution. It comes to the pixels again. So the higher pixels camera is the better for photography. I can recommend you a Nikon 850 now it's come, which has a 50 megapixel around camera. That is the best one currently for that. Yeah, and if any another camera is of Sony. Sony's come off R series. All the R series cameras you can find a higher megapixels. That is for the good. That is good for the photography again, and Sony has a benefit of clicking in low light also. If you have a very low light conditions, evening time you have very low light. I'm not talking about no lights. I'm talking about low lights where you need some light to get photograph. There is nothing called no lights. So for that, Sony is good. Yes.
Amit, thanks for that. And then there is one more question which is directed to you. So what kind of settings in a DSLR do you use to click images of fast and agile birds like swift or martins?
Okay. So for that, see, you know the situation first. What happens here, Swift and these are birds moves very fast, right? So to capture the fast movement birds, we need to keep our shutter speed as maximum as possible. Again, to maintain that, I have showed you that If you can, sir, if you can make my PPT
Screen.
black, please.
Yes. 1 second. Yeah.
Okay, here what happens, we have a triangle rules, exposure triangle thing. So aperture, ISO and shutter speed. With these three things, we have to play around for the photograph, right? To get a proper exposure photo. So in this, how we choose things, we have to choose the priority of these settings. So in this condition, we know that bird is moving very fast. Okay, so to capture that fast thing, the shutter speed has to be highest. So you can see the image down here. This is the blurrish coming, and the more you go and more you increase the shutter speed, more sharper you get. Okay, so keep the priority the shutter speed first, and then according to this, adjust your uh, im- adjust your thing, the light in your camera, how much you are getting, exposure basically. So aperture and ISO will be set depends on the shutter speed. After shutter speed, so keep the shutter speed priority.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Amit, for that explanation. And there is one more for you. So, is there any camera that would be good for both videography and photography?
It's a Okay, they are actually all the cameras good for videography, photography is at a certain level again. If you want to shoot for some bigger screen or bigger frame films and all, then you need definitely a dedicated camera for video. Mid-range cameras are there like of Sony, I feel, of A7 III, which is for the mid-range, I can say, and Nikon 810 also, 800 series, anyone, and yeah, Canon also. There is a Mark 3, Mark 4, 5D series. These are one.
Maybe you could also tell some beginner level cameras as well, because everyone can't afford a 5D or a 6D.
Yeah, if like okay, so for the budget thing, we can see actually all the camera shoots videos and photos. Again, that has a limited some certain level. It has a limit, so we can't shoot 4K on all the cameras. So kind of if we go to the Canon, we have 600D, 650D, 700D. Those cameras are there. For the Nikon, we all have three to now the series of 5000 series is there. 5000, 5500, all those things, 5300 and all. These are the series. So you can shoot video and photo together, but depends on the light again. And Sony also has A series camera, which is A6500 is now come. A6500, A6600. These cameras are there.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Amit. And there's a follow up, and then I think this would be the last question for the day. Would you recommend mirrorless cameras?
Not for photographer, for videos. So what happens for the photographer, I can tell you now, because mirrorless camera doesn't have a mirror which helps you to see the live thing from the eyepiece. When you put your eye on the eyepiece, so that is the digital thing. In the mirrorless camera, all the mirrorless camera shows you the digital input in the eyepiece. So you're not exact what is happening. Once you click one photo, you don't know what is happening to the second photo. So you get a in between a gap for that. It becomes a black. So for the photographer, I will not recommend. For videos, yes. It's lighter, smaller, and a good quality is now coming in the mirrorless. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Amit. And I think with that, we would end today's session. I want to thank Amit and Shalma both for their valuable time that you have given to us for today's sessions. And for everyone else, there is a talk that's going to happen tomorrow as well. Please note that there will be a single talk tomorrow and not two as on the other days. It's going to be called the Birding for a Better Tomorrow. So please join us tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. For another talk, and on the 1st of February as well, which will be the concluding day of the Pre-Bird Festival webinars that will be hosted by the Goa Forest Department. With that, I would want to thank everyone who has attended the talk for the day, and a very good evening to everyone.